meeting, June 11th. First thing is call to order. And let me remind everybody, mute your mics if you're doing something other than speaking. And I think the staff's going to do the roll call.
Sorry, bear with me.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay. Member Porter.
Here.
Member Wheeler.
Here.
Member Jacobson. Okay. Member Miles.
Here.
Okay. Member Wood. Sperling Wood.
Here.
Okay. Member Rockwell. I recall he said he may be late because he's in another meeting at the moment, so he may be joining us. Member Davis. Member Crow.
Here.
And Member Fultz.
Here.
All right. So we do have a quorum.
Okay. First item is a motion to adopt the consent items.
Mr. Chair, I so move, but I have a amendment to make to one of the minutes.
Okay. That is on the meeting. I guess go ahead with that.
The amendment would be, I made the motion at the end of the May 13th meeting to approve staff's recommendation for the solar PPA. And at the end of my motion, I said, with the request that staff continue to present status updates to UAB members at our scheduled board meetings.
Yes.
So I just wanted that on the record so that, we can kind of keep track of this as we go along.
Good point.
All right.
And that language, by the way, I'll give the tip of the hat to Ed. We kind of went back and forth on it. That's how I ended up there.
Yeah, I remember that.
So never had a change in the minutes before. Do we just approve that with the changes or?
That's my understanding, but
Yeah.
Yes, you can vote on that with the amendment.
Right. Okay, so with the motion, you're move to approve the adoption of consent items with the change in the one meeting minute.
So moved.
I hear a second.
second,
Is that seconded?
that was me, Robin. We'll just have, yes. I'm not quite sure who moved.
I thought it was you.
I did originally, but then someone else moved on top of me, so I got out of the way.
All right. We have a motion and a second. And is this where I ask for citizen comment on the motion?
We don't have any comments, Chair, on this
Okay.
matter.
All right. Thank you. All those in favor of adopting the consent items with the motion to add dialogue to the meeting minutes, say aye. Oh,
Aye.
wait a minute.
Aye.
Sorry.
Aye.
We got to do a roll call on that, don't we, Robin?
Yes.
Yeah.
For virtual, I think that's what it is.
Okay, just answer Robin's query.
Okay, Member Porter,
Aye.
Member Wheeler,
Aye.
Member Jacobson,
Aye.
Member Miles,
Aye.
Member Rockwell is absent, Member Crow,
Aye.
and Member Fultz.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes.
All right. All right. That gets us down to adoption of the agenda. So I hear a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening.
So move.
We have a suggestion from staff. Excuse me, let me break that up a minute, Wes. But adoption or the suggestion from staff is because we have two fairly big items tonight is to put off until the next meeting the discussion of the budget and leave tonight's meeting just for the DH2 issue.
I'll accept Steph's recommendation and amend my motion accordingly.
Second.
And Barry's got a second on that. Okay. Let me question staff first. Did I get that right, staff?
Yes.
Okay.
And just for the record, for anyone who is listening, that was item number 200028.
That's correct. Yes.
So if I may, this item will come back on July 9th, and at that point we'll bring back, we'll also have the balance of our budget presentation, which will be the rates piece of it. So
Yeah.
we'll actually have a little bit of a long evening on that date. So July 9th is your next meeting, I believe.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any citizen comment on this adoption of the agenda?
I'm sorry, sir. We do not have any comment.
All right, thank you. All right, then back to staff to do a roll call on the passing or not of that motion. Go ahead.
Member Porter,
Aye.
Member Wheeler,
Aye.
Member Jacobson,
Aye.
Member Miles,
Aye.
Member Rockwell is absent, Member Crow,
Aye.
and Member Foltz.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Claudia just mentioned that we may have a very long meeting the next time we get together. We might want to consider moving our meeting time up a little earlier if it's going to be a long night. I don't know if staff can do that or not.
I would say that would it be good enough if we just started at the regular time rather than 6?
Okay.
Yeah, or would it be, are you saying move it even up to 5?
I apologize, Mr. Chair, we'll accommodate the presentation to whatever time frame that you give us. So I would expect that it would take about 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, before we move on.
Sure.
The reason, I want to remind you all that the reason we had to start later tonight is because there was another meeting before this one that had to be broadcast. And we
Yeah.
wanted to make sure the two didn't overlap.
Absolutely.
Ordinarily, we will be able to start at 5:30. There's also talk about possibly starting in-person meetings again in July. So I will be bringing more information to you about that soon.
Okay. All right. So with the thought that maybe we'll get back to the regular meeting times, maybe that'll work out for best. Okay. Where does that leave us? I lost my situational awareness there for a second.
So I think we're up to state of the utility and the operational update.
That's right. State of the utility next, the favorite part of the meeting.
It's only because Tom presents it.
Gotta like it.
I don't know about that. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman Porter and members of the UAB. Tom Brown, Chief Operating Officer for GRU with the State of the Utility for April 2020. April obviously was probably the second month for the City of Gainesville working through the coronavirus like the rest of the world at this point. For the utility, we had about 300 people working, telecommuting at home, 550 people reporting as normal duties to work. We never stopped working. Everything for us was business as usual, except for the telecommuting. We did put extraordinary measures in place with shifting of crews, try and minimize exposure to each other and for safety. And so far to date, we haven't had anybody within the organization have a positive outcome for testing for the coronavirus. So that's all good on that behalf. At present, we're starting to return to quasi-normal operations. We are in level 2 response at this point. At least probably for next few weeks. We'll evaluate as we go along. Performance-wise, for the month of April, safety, we had one recordable for the month, which brings us to 7 for the year to date. Employee had a back strain and was prescribed some medication, so it became a recordable. Vehicles, it wasn't a stellar month. We had 5 recordables with 3 preventable. They were all relatively minor in nature, but more than we would like to see. On a positive note, for compliance, we had an outstanding result from our CERC on-site SIP audit. We had no findings, and for the SIP audit, that's a very, very unusual event. I'm so proud of our team, so proud of our guys across the organization. They just been doing some really wonderful work, making sure that we keep up with the program with our compliance, but you couldn't ask for better than that. We were actually received some real accolades from the audit team, which is really unusual. You know, I've been doing this for 40 some odd years, and I have never, ever seen that kind of praise come out of a regulatory body, particularly a NERC body, about our performance. So just kudos to everybody that was involved in that effort. For the month reliability, we had 58 outages. We were at 175 year to date. We had 25 vegetation, 17 were equipment failures, 5 weather, and 4 animals. So pretty typical for the month. Energy delivery, you've probably heard a lot of talk around the industry about a drop off in consumption and production due to the coronavirus. Actually, compared to last April, our electric production was up. In 2019, we had 124,600 megawatt hours. In 2020, we had 134,500. So they're actually a little bit higher. And if you look on the charts that were involved in your packet, look at that. It's really difficult to see much of a difference. We have seen a little bit of drop off on the commercial side. Residential side, as you might imagine, with everybody staying home, has been a little bit higher, but overall the total delivered power is a little bit higher. We also saw the same thing on the gas side. We were looking at 1,500,000 therms this year versus 1,300,000 for last year.
Yeah, Tom, I drop in here and say that, you know, we did get some updates though for May, and we saw some real drop off on the electric side. Overall was close to 5%, driven largely by commercial, and water and wastewater were down almost a combination of 11%. So starting to feel some of that, you know, some of that impact that, you know, will lead into some of our calculations and considerations when we get into the budget.
Yeah.
We may have some drawdowns on, you know, some of the reserves on a larger scale than what we had originally anticipated.
Yeah. You got to temper it a little bit with weather, with the amount of rainfall and everything. And if you're going to pick 2 months to have reduced consumption, those aren't bad months to have it in during our shoulder months when, you know, production's normally a little bit lower than obviously the summer months, which are your peak months. Availability for the month, we had really great strong availability for all units except for Deerhaven 2, which was off all month for a scheduled outage. Water, wastewater as normal, looks very typical for the month. We had 2 SSO overflows, but everything else looks pretty typical. So I'll be glad to entertain any questions from the UAB members if they have any. If not, that's my report for the month.
Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to express my thanks to the linemen who've been out this last week. Had a lot of rain, a lot of calls. We had power out once or twice in my neighborhood, and it was a quick response, and folks seem to be really appreciative of their efforts. So thank you, Tom.
You're more than welcome. I'm sure the guys always do appreciate hearing from people and getting the positive feedback from it. But yeah, they've been doing some outstanding work.
Chair, I had a few questions as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason. If you've got a little bit more volume on your end, try that out. You're a little quiet there tonight.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So my questions, I guess, are COVID related. I'm wondering if we could just get a restatement of the GRU disconnect policy during this time, for starters.
A restatement of the disconnect policy?
Right. So GRU has suspended disconnects, right, during this time?
Yeah, through, I forget the exact date in July. I think it's the 16th. Is that right, Robin? I know we had built it around the 15th, and I couldn't remember which side of the 15th it was on, but I keep thinking it was the 16th. And there's also a moratorium on the late charges for that period of time as well. And we're reaching out into the community with some ads and some just personal interaction. I know Yvette Carter, my Chief Inclusion Officer, is out there telling people that we're offering some extended payment terms for folks. We know it's going to be a hurdle for them when they get back to when disconnects are available for the utility. We'd like to have anybody that would otherwise be disconnected after that period of time be given some extended terms and get on a program so that we won't have to disconnect them. I think it's one of the unfortunate parts here as a utility, that is the ultimate way that we collect money, and we're going to get back to that at some point. So there's going to be a transition period, and we're trying to make that as soft a landing for our customers as we can. So right now, that's how we're working it.
Thank you. And I wanted to, just of course to reiterate what Wes said. I really have appreciated the way that GRU has handled this crisis. And I'm just wondering what sort of indicators the utility is relying on that signal that a return to quote normal operations is warranted and would cause us to go back to, say, remote operations. I don't know if anybody's looked at the Florida Department of Health statistics in the last week or two, but they're pretty alarming.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, we here in Alachua, we're still seeing that positivity rate. Isn't that a weird term, by the way? The positivity rate on whether you've contracted corona, or you think it would be a negativity rate, right? But whether the tests come back positive is still way below the 5% that's been established, and we continue to really make it clear to our employees that even though some of them may have some individual ideas that they don't need to wear masks, it's a sign of respect and caring for your fellow individual to wear masks when you're in and around the office. And so that's what we promote, and we ensure that that's happening within the offices, and we are socially distancing. We have the luxury of having a lot of space where people can spread out. We're bringing people back on a kind of a layered basis. We had basically a third of our, or actually a half of our people working remotely come back June 1st. The other half is coming back June 15th. The remainder are coming back before the end of June that are folks that are at risk, and have other issues. So yeah, we're monitoring that, and I think it's all about balance, and that's what we're trying to attain. And then the other thing is each one of the entry points at our locations, we do the temperature scan, the temporal temperature scan, and we ensure that people entering the offices are wearing masks.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a really unprecedented crisis, and I'm sure that the utility has learned an awful lot from having to negotiate this. And so I'm sure it's knowledge that will be useful to us again in the future at some point. So thank you all for your incredible work during this time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I jump in?
Yes, please, Carla.
Did Tom leave?
No, Tom's still here.
Still here.
He just moved positions on my screen. So I had one question, particularly about the COVID-19 testing. It's wonderful to hear that we don't have any positives in there so far. Are you doing ongoing testing yourself? Are you requiring testing to be done by the employee? Do they have to show anything that says they've had a test for us to know if anybody, because I'm not concerned, the nurse in me and thinks about the epidemic as, you know, we have non-detectable folk who sometimes don't get tested, who've been exposed and could be have the antibodies. And so we're able to kind of determine that. Do you all have any internal controls, is my first question, to assure that they're actually having tests done? Are you just relying on them, or what kind of setup do you have with that?
That's a lot of questions.
I'm sorry. That's one. That's one question.
No, that's a very good question. We do have protocols in place. We're not testing everybody in general. We are sending people for tests if they've known they have contact with somebody that does test positive. If they've come in contact with somebody that's tested positive, we will send them home and test them, and they will not return to work until they are negative. But it's basically a first level contact that we would do the testing on. We have had a couple groups where we thought we had exposure and where we sent the entire crew for testing, and they've all come back negative.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I'm wondering if in the future, especially once you start to reopen and you have more people coming in contact with each other, perhaps to partner with the Department of Health or the fire department who's doing some free testing, and maybe have them come on site at some point, or bring them mobile, because they have a mobile unit that they use for testing, not necessarily come in the building to make it more crowded, but people return to work. It'd be nice to partner with someone on site to make sure that we're not having any exposures from the layered opening that Ed was talking about. That was one. And as far as the program to prevent disconnect when we start back, that's been one of my big concerns. And I've done a lot of community engagement, trying to encourage people as much as they possibly can during this time to make sure that they try to keep up with at least part of it. But I'm wondering, have you done an assessment of any sort to see, you know, how deficient we are in payments? Do we know how we've been impacted by the people that are not paying, what that number looks like for us?
Yeah, we run aging reports at the appropriate times, and we're probably about $1 million behind in terms of delinquencies. That's probably a lot less than some of the other utilities are experiencing. You know, it's certainly enough to make an impact on our budget. And, you know, I think they're the two elements. I think you pinpointed it. You know, the one element is going to be, you know, whether people can pay. And, you know, we're structured so that we may be able to get that paid over time. The other one will be just the absolute loss in revenue, right? You know, you literally aren't having some businesses that are using the same amount of electricity or water and wastewater services as they otherwise would use, and that gets lost forever. So it's a combination of the two that we're going to have to incorporate in our forward looking budget for this upcoming year, which, you know, obviously will put pressure on the utility, and typically that pressure is felt in rates. But I will tell you that, you know, I've asked staff to take really a different view of our budget this year. And just to let you know, as a result of that, you know, we're looking for defunding of some positions within the organization that are not filled at this point, but, you know, are part of what we would typically have as our, you know, our requirement for positions. So that's something that the GRU really hasn't done in the past, is defund a bunch of positions. But I think these are unusual times, so I've asked them to do that, as well as really taking some hard looks at other expenditures that we would otherwise do to keep, you know, the service that you know we're known for. And, but it's something that just we have to do to make sure that the community is not looking, straight down the teeth of some big rate increases and things like that.
Absolutely. And I have one more question. Maybe I'll come back to it later. It escapes me. Maybe now wasn't the time. But I can appreciate that disconnect. Oh, I know what my other question is. Are we following closely what the county is doing as far as opening business? Let me tell you what one of my concerns are. I want to make sure that we're approaching this reopening in our county holistically, where we're all on the same page. I would hate to see some of these small businesses that have been granted permission to kind of reopen, but maybe not at full capacity. I just don't want businesses to continue to go out of business because they can't pay their bills, and make sure that we have something in place where we're transitioning not just the residents who haven't, but as businesses start to operate, revenues have been down for them. A lot of them have been closed for a few months. And so making sure that we have something for our commercial clients, residents, ratepayers, team members, investors, that we have for our residents to make sure everybody's kind of made whole, so that we're, kind of on the same page with the county. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
Oh, sure. No, well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we do talk usually in terms of residential customers, but we've extended that same moratorium for non-residential customers. So we are aware of our commercial customers as well. And while I was on the Zoom, David Warm informed me that the date of the moratorium is through the 17th of July. So it's not the 16th, but it is the 17th. And it's funny, as I'm talking, I'm looking at my gallery view here. I do see some of the folks that are operating some of our facilities on this. And I did want to mention to you, when you were talking about returning to normal operations, and this is kind of a little plug for our folks, right? We never really left normal operations. And Dino loves to tell me that, we're all about essential services. So, we were planning all along, the biggest points within the organization were our water services, maintaining the clean water from the wells that we get, filtering that out, delivering it to the customers, as well as, some of the system control areas within electric, as well as some of the generating facilities. So we had plans in place that we would sequester employees in these sites if, we were to have some positives within the organization, so that they would be immune, if you will, or they'd be quarantined away from the rest of the population. And, to that end, we supplied, some canned goods and other foods, and put some freezers in place so that could occur. Luckily, we haven't had to do that, although that plan is still in place if we have to get to that point. And the second part of that is, being essential service employees, there would have been a plan that folks would literally have to work while they're sick. As harsh as that may sound, that's the kind of dedication that we have from the employees here. We had a consultant that took the general government and GRU side through a strategic planning session, and he was talking about some folks that were in Gallup, New Mexico, and that 60% of the folks that were on the water system side over there were COVID positive. And what they literally did was, they shut down the operations, were bringing in bottled water and all kinds of other things, and bringing in folks from the outside. But we've had some plan A, plan B, and plan C's in place to keep GRU operating and supplying the kind of services that the community is accustomed to.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Tom, appreciate you.
Welcome.
I got you.
Yeah, I have to say that, I've been really impressed with the people at GRU and their response to this pandemic. In meeting with other organizations, other Zoom calls, there are organizations, utilities in the north, for example, that I know they've had absentee rates of up to 30% of people that just refuse to come to work. And we've absolutely not had that. We've had tremendous cooperation from our employees that have done outstanding work for us and continue to do so.
All right. All right. Any other questions from our State of the Utility report? Yes, Member Crow.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I too share what you've said about the appreciation for all the hard work. And I think we ought to go on record as the UAB and say that we as a group are very grateful and appreciative and full of admiration for the dedication of the staff during this difficult time. And we truly appreciate all the going above and beyond the call of duty. In addition to that, I just wanted to note that Ed twice has talked about the potential impact of some of the revenue shortfalls. There was an email that was distributed to all the UAB members that talked about the shortfall. And when I read that, it was obvious that it was just a statement of numbers rather than an impact of what that might mean down the road. So I'm wondering if we can ask that in the next budget session, when we meet, there can be a special focus given to this shortfall that we're experiencing and what its impacts appear to be and what that might mean for the policy of the utility.
Yeah, that's a great request, and that's exactly, it was basically to alert you folks to the fact that there are impacts. We're trying to quantify them, and Claudia and her team are working on that. I mean, I will tell you, it's kind of a dilemma for us because we only know part of the story. So we don't want to be too aggressive on one side. We don't want to be too cavalier on the other side. If you know, we want to be kind of like the three bears and just be just right with what we come up with. And so we're trying to be prudent as possible. We're basically saying, yeah, there could be these impacts, but as you heard from Tom, you know, some of these are weather related. We think we're carving out the weather indicators. We are benchmarking ourselves against other utilities. We've had conversations with rating agencies up in New York, who you know, are probably one of the bigger storehouses of information on how COVID is affecting some of the utilities. And so, you know, we look at that. We're trying to come up with a working calculation of what the impact will be on reserves. And when we get together next at the budget workshop, we're really hoping that we can vet that a little bit with you to give you some idea of what the impact's going to be. So you're right there with us.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for those comments and questions. I think at this time we might be able to move on to, since we agreed to put off the budget discussion until the next meeting, our next item of business is the approval of Deer Haven Unit 2 dual fuel project. And
Did you notice I have to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right.
I've been having a lot of fun with the change from, we were calling it the gasification project. And I think people were having heartburn with that. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
So we went to dual fuel, which has kind of a flow to it, right?
Yeah.
That's another good joke, right? So with that, we'll turn it over to, I don't know if it goes to Mr. Brown or to Mr. Height or to Mr. DeLeo first. I'll throw it up in the air and whoever grabs the bouquet gets it first.
It's me. Good evening, Chairman Porter and members of UAB, Tom Brown, COO for GRU. It's a pleasure really to bring this to you tonight. Remember last month we had the solar project we brought to you, and this is actually, in my mind, the next step towards significant reduction in GRU's carbon footprint. As we present this to you, it'll become clear. It's actually been I'm going to say close to 18 months in development. There's an awful lot of work and studies that go into these projects before we believe they're ready to be presented. But I think you'll see we've done our homework and we've got a real sound proposal in front of you. Some of the team members that are here tonight are the same ones that were here last week. Dino DeLeo, our energy supply officer, is on the line, and Chuck Height, who's going to be is the project manager for this particular dual fuel project. We have Eric Walters will also be presenting. He's administrator and fuels operations director. We have Jamie Frashage. He's a manager utility analyst, does our finance analyst for us on the projects, and Dave Hollingsworth, the production assurance support director, is involved, and Melissa Jones, our director of production. We've actually had quite a bit of effort, integrated effort from across the energy supply group, as well as other departments within GRU to get everything brought together. Some of the things I'd like to say, I mean, Deerhaven 2 has been our largest generating plant. It's basically capable of 220 megawatts gross megawatt output. It typically has provided 25 to 30% of our annual load recently. That's like 500 to 700,000 megawatt hours per year out of normally our consumption is about 2.2 million. It does 500 to 700,000 of them. The primary fuel has been coal, but it is capable right now of being dual fired up to 30 megawatts of gas. The burners are really meant to be startup burners more so than dual fuel. But as we speak, we are taking advantage of the low gas prices by at least firing the first 30 megawatts on gas. The project actually will increase the capability of the unit to be 100% fired on gas and also maintain the dual fuel capability. And this will provide a physical hedge for GRU against gas prices long-term by being able to switch over to coal when we need to. And through the presentation, you'll also see there are periods of the year when gas supplies become tight, and we probably will in fact go back on to coal, probably if history maintains itself, probably 2 to 3 weeks a year we'll be on coal. The rest of the time, as long as pricing's low, it'll be on gas. Under the present gas pricing, which has been just crazy low and forecast to stay that way for many, many years, the payback on this project is very, very quick. You're going to see some amazing returns. We think it's the logical next step on our path towards being 100% renewable by 2045. It's not renewable per se, but again, it takes quite a bit of CO2 off the table. We'll see. We believe it'll reduce our CO2 emissions by 40% from current, and probably between 250 and 300,000 tons of CO2 per year. And that's a lot of tonnage of CO2. So for the dollars being spent and the amount of tonnage being reduced, we think it's a outstanding project for GRU going forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chuck Height to start a presentation. Chuck Height, project manager for the dual fuel project. So Chuck, why don't you go ahead?
Share my screen. Robin, can you share the screen?
As you can tell, Chuck and I are vying for the longest hair growing within the organization.
We're working at it.
That's what my headphones are for. They hide where all that hair is.
Is there a ponytail back there?
Yeah, getting there.
Yeah,
I'm trying, but I didn't win the contest.
You want to share your screen, or do you need me to put it up for you?
If you can allow me to share mine, that would be great.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my wife's calling me Bullwinkle because it just comes out the side.
Ah, what's the matter, you?
What's the matter, you? You got that.
Okay. I still don't have screen sharing.
Chuck, you should have the ability to share your screen.
Isn't it down on the bottom? Check with,
Yeah, it says host is disabled. Host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh, okay, sorry. We
No
didn't.
worries.
Yeah, it's okay, Robin. We got all night. We don't have to do the budget anymore.
Okay, try again. We apologize.
Okay.
I'm Pat by the time we're back in person meetings.
All right. So you should see my screen now.
Yep.
All right. Well, first off, good evening, and thank you for hearing our presentation this evening on the Deerhaven Dual Fuel Project. Basically, as far as the overall order of the presentation, we'll talk about the community benefits, background, fuel supply considerations, due diligence work that we've performed, scope of the work, some project financials, the schedule and schedule considerations, as well as a conclusion, recommendation to the City Commission, as well as follow that up with some, I refer to them as FAQs, but they're actually commissioner or UAB member and Sierra Club member questions that have been posed that we'd like to take some time this evening at your discretion to respond to. So with that, as Tom mentioned, we do see this project as really having a number of community benefits, including reducing our cost of fuel, which overall reduces rate pressure on our customers, reduces emissions, including CO2, sulfur dioxides, nitrogen oxides, mercury, and it moves us closer to our goal of 100% renewable. And by that, I mean the overall goal of that commission item was really driven by the intent to reduce carbon emissions and our carbon footprint. And I think this project goes a long way towards that. So moving on, by way of background, Unit 2, this is related to Deerhaven Unit 2. It entered service around 1980. It's our largest generating unit with a capacity of 28 megawatts net. Right now, the primary fuel is coal, and we have a limited capacity to burn natural gas. About 30 megawatts of that 228 megawatts can actually come from natural gas. The unit itself operates primarily as a baseload unit, and it fulfills a really valuable role in our system by allowing us to match load. This unit is able to follow load and ramp relatively quickly, and also to operate over a wide range of loads. And it really benefits us in a number of ways in that regard. But right now, the unit is planned to continue service through calendar year 2032. The primary, one of the things that this unit also provides is fuel storage and fuel diversity. Because we are able to have fuel stored on the ground in the form of coal, no matter what happens in the markets or supply chain, we're somewhat insulated from that. And that provides us a lot of stability in our rates. But we feel like we can do better. That said, we anticipate a significant cost advantage for using natural gas in lieu of coal as the primary fuel for Unit 2. Again, I mentioned that the City Commission has adopted a resolution to be 100% renewable by 2045. And we performed an evaluation on adding the dual fuel capacity to Deerhaven 2, giving the unit the increased capability to burn as much as 100% natural gas. And we'll talk more about that. So from a fuel supply standpoint, some of the complexities that we deal with are that natural gas is purchased by GRU from suppliers, and then we have to separately contract for the delivery. There's two types of transportation that we can contract for, firm or non-firm. firm gas capacity is very expensive. And one of the advantages we see of a dual fuel concept for Unit 2 is that non-firm gas is available most days of the year. And so it gives us some flexibility, and we'll be able to use non-firm transportation during most of the year when it's available, and kind of limit the amount of firm gas that we have to buy, which provides some cost benefit to our customers. Obtaining firm natural gas supply might incur significant cost to meet the load on extreme temperature days. And, dual fuel capability keeps the fuel supply cost lower. We have an inventory of coal that we can use as a hedge against natural gas constraints. Coal is currently running about 47% more expensive than gas, though. But that's a situation that we don't expect to reverse for the next few years. We expect gas to continue to be less expensive than coal for the next couple of years. By converting to allow for full dual fuel capability for Unit 2, we can kind of strike a balance and offer the best of both worlds, where we maintain the reliability and fuel flexibility and the ability to cushion against spikes in the price of natural gas, while also taking advantage of the lower cost of natural gas. So moving on to talk a little bit about the due diligence that was performed. Basically, we looked at a number of different areas. Basically, it's the three legs of the stool. What's the technical capability and operational merits of such a project? What are the financial metrics? And then the environmental. So we'll drill down and talk about those then. So we did some boiler modeling. We initiated studies to do boiler modeling to see if the project would adversely affect the equipment performance or longevity. We did commissioned boiler combustion studies to determine the air impacts, the air emission impacts. We engaged an engineering firm to work with us to provide cost estimates for the project implementation. And we also did environmental permitting studies as well. And, as for the results related to boiler modeling and analysis, the result was that the modeling results confirmed that the boiler could operate at 100% natural gas with no adverse effect on equipment performance or longevity. We did not do any tests or any analysis to determine if it would last longer or anything like that. That was an unasked question, but we were mostly trying to drill down on whether there would be any adverse effect, and the consultant determined that there would be none. Related to boiler combustion modeling and analysis to determine air emission impacts, the modeling predicted reduced emissions during natural gas operations, and we'll talk more about those in some more detailed slides coming up. Related to cost estimates, the cost estimates were validated by a third-party engineering firm, and we feel that our numbers are sound as far as the implementation costs. And on an environmental permitting side, we feel that the project is permittable within the project schedule. And, just one of the things that really worked out is, as we did the due diligence, we discovered that our boiler was really well set up and suited for this type of conversion. What you're looking at is a picture on the left and a sketch on the right. The picture on the left is of the coal pipes, and basically this is looking at the side of the boiler in Unit 2. This is burner 9R, and there's 18 boilers, 1 through 9F on the front side, and then 1 through 9R on the opposed side. And basically coal comes down, it goes through an elbow and then into the boiler as a fine powder. And on the right is basically a modification that we would be making to the boiler, to that pipe. There's an elbow there that you can see detailed in the center. And basically you've got a gas lance with a nozzle on the end of it. And that extends and contracts, and basically allows you to basically insert a gas burner into the boiler when you want to burn gas, and you can retract it without actually bringing the boiler offline or doing any major types of retrofits in the field, resulting in downtime. So it's a really elegant solution we're able to find, and it's very cost effective. But again, part of that is the fact that our boiler was real well set up for that because of its original design. So looking at the scope of work, though, we see 3 distinct phases of work that needs to occur: pre-outage, outage critical, and then post-outage. So when you break it down, pre-outage, we have permitting work we need to do, because before we can install anything on the unit, we have to receive permission from regulatory authorities. We've got to order new combustion hardware and obviously receive that. Piping and installation engineering has to be done. Design and order required control equipment, and then begin installation of the piping and electrical work. Now, to replace those elbows and put those lances in, basically we need about a 2-week outage, because we need to obviously install that hardware, but we'd also need to install some additional control cabinets in the control system and do a little bit of programming. And both of those have to be done while the unit is off. And so there's a critical fact there, or a critical window that we have to find, where we can get 2 weeks where the unit isn't committed to be online, that we can do that work. And then after the outage, we would come back and complete the mechanical and electrical installation and commission the system and bring it online. So, related to the emissions that we spoke about, the modeling that we did, that was done, basically forecasts some pretty significant reductions in air emissions. In the case of SO2, it's 99.6% reduction, mercury 63%, particulate matter 42%, 39% for CO2, and that's the big one that we're concerned about. And then NOx at 39%. And what does this really mean? Basically, we asked our environmental folks to go through and look at what our current emissions are, and that's basically detailed in the baseline case for coal and natural gas mix. Currently, we're burning kind of a mix of some gas with mostly coal. We burn as much gas in economic times like this as we can. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the what it would look like if we were to burn all gas. And then on the far right column, you've got what the reduction would be in CO2. So I think these are pretty healthy reductions. And I think of note, you'll see that for years 2020 through 2028, you're looking at between 270 and 339,000 or 340 or 350,000 tons a year of reduction in CO2. And that's really a pretty significant reduction compared to other opportunities that we have to do that. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Jamie Versage, who's our managing utility analyst, and he'll take us through the financials.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Bershaw. I'm a managing analyst in energy supply. I'm going to talk through some of the financial components of the project. The cost estimate for the total project cost is $12.5 million. And this slide includes a quarterly breakdown of the expenditures anticipated for the project. As was discussed earlier in the presentation, there is equipment ordered, there's engineering work, permitting, controls work done before Deer Haven 2's outage in December. So those are the expenses that you see in fiscal year 2020. In the first quarter of 2021, we have the installation work happening, a lot of physical work being done, and this is where roughly half of the project expenditures occur. After the physical installation in December, we have the controls and integration work being done in the second quarter of fiscal year 2021. And we have the final integration and project cleanup after that. So in fiscal year 2020, we have about 2.1 million in project expenditures. And we have about 10.4 million in expenditures in fiscal year 2021. We expect to begin realizing the benefits of the project in the third quarter of fiscal year 2021. Next slide, please. There are significant operational and fuel savings for the project. And this slide is a snapshot of the potential fuel savings with the project. We're taking advantage of the difference between higher coal costs and lower natural gas costs. This slide is a little tough to see, but what we have here is annual savings of running the unit on natural gas versus coal at different load points. The heat rate or efficiency of the unit varies with loading, but this slide highlights the point where Deer Haven 2 runs on average around 80 megawatts. Natural gas prices are extremely low right now. Today, our gas dispatch cost was $1.83 per MMBTU, and our coal dispatch cost was $3.46 per MMBTU. So gas was almost half the cost of coal. However, prices are not forecasted to stay this low forever. So here we have an example. We have the average natural gas and coal price from April through September, the forecasted prices. So this is the average price remaining in fiscal year 21 after the project comes online. Here, a gas price of $2.99 is plugged in, and a coal price of $3.76 is plugged in, so about a 20% difference. At those prices, in an average year with Deer Haven 2 loaded at about 80 megawatts, the project would save about $4 million. Next slide, please. The project has a modified internal rate of return of 20%, assuming a reinvestment rate of 3% and a net present value of almost 51 million. A modified internal rate of return, or MIRR, is more conservative than a traditional IRR in that the cash flows are reinvested at some dictated rate rather than the project's IRR. So for this assumption, we're saying that we're paying down our debt. We have a 3% reinvestment rate, which is probably pretty close to our cost of debt. So we have about 20% modified internal rate of return, and we have an NPV of almost 51 million. And these figures assume savings through 2031. We use NYMEX, which is the New York Mercantile Exchange monthly futures price, added to GRU's expected delivery costs, our current coal price forecast, and operational savings from running the unit on natural gas most of the year instead of coal. Next slide, please. GRU has a 5-year detailed outage calendar, and as the outages of these units take a lot of planning and preparation. The next full outage is available in October 2021, but there is a short outage of Deer Haven 2 scheduled for this December. The outage in this December represents an opportunity to get the equipment installed inside the unit and complete the controls and remaining electrical and piping work after the outage when we're back running on coal. And because the benefits, both financial and environmental, are so good for the project, staff recommends doing the implementation at the earliest opportunity in December. Some of the equipment components have long lead times, about 20 weeks. So that's why we're here now. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the project has great benefits. The three legs of the capital project stool are supported. It is technically and operationally feasible. It's been proven by other utilities. It has a very good return on investment, and it has substantial emissions reductions. Now, I just want to talk just for a second about those emission reductions and what that means, because for me, it's very hard to visualize what 300,000 tons of CO2 really is. A common equivalent example you hear is taking cars off the road. So the average American car emits about 5 tons of CO2 per year. So if we're reducing our emissions by 300,000 tons of CO2 per year, it's equivalent to taking 60,000 cars off the road. And in Alachua County, there's 173,000 cars and light trucks on the road. So this is equivalent to taking almost a third of the cars and light trucks in Alachua County off the road, which is pretty remarkable. The project reduces rate pressure for all customers, and it will reduce air emissions within our community. The project does have a tight window for implementation this year, so staff recommends the earliest opportunity to implement the project so that GRU's customers can realize the benefits as soon as possible. And so the planned recommendation to the City Commission is to authorize the general manager or his designee to execute agreements as required to complete the project in accordance with GRU procurement policies and procedures, and the approval of the city attorney as to form and legality. And we've received some questions from UAB members and also from some other concerned folks, and we prepared responses to those, and Eric Walters is going to talk us through those.
Thank you, Jamie. Chair, members, my name is Eric Walters. I'm the Admin and Fuels Operations Director of GRU. I've got the responsibility of system dispatch and also fuels in my area. And so this project is kind of the culmination and brings a lot of that together. So as Jamie mentioned, we did receive some questions from different members of the board as well as from outside. So we attempted to go through and provide some answers to those questions. So I'll kind of walk through them and give you the answers that we have. We have about 13 questions, so hopefully it won't take so long. But I'll just read through them and then briefly go through the answers. So the first question is on dealing with the estimated reduction of emissions from natural gas versus coal, and asking basically, does this estimate take into account any cradle to grave pollution associated with natural gas, or only at the point of emission or combustion? So for our analysis, the emissions are only related to the point of combustion, and they are specific to Unit 2. There's not a generalization, it's actual emissions data that we've used. Question 2 is, can you provide a more detailed explanation of the concept of firm versus non-firm with regards to gas? And sure, the quick and dirty answer is, well, quick and clean answer here, is that natural gas firm is considered uninterruptible by contract. We have a contract with a natural gas pipeline, and as a result, we reserve a amount of space in that pipeline to deliver the volume of gas that we've contracted with. No one else can use that space, and we can utilize the full space. GRU can utilize the full space as needed up to that contract limit. There are times where either GRU or another entity does not use the full volume that is considered firm, and they open that up to allow someone else to use. And that's basically where that non-firm concept comes from. It is considered interruptible, and it is dependent on availability. So as natural gas volume is requested or nominated, there is no guarantee of delivery. On the other hand, though, non-firm gas can be bought cheaper. That capacity charge is a lot lower than a firm charge. That firm charge is a fixed fee that we pay for that volume of gas no matter what. A non-firm can be done as an opportunity cost, and as a much lower capacity cost, and as well as but exchange for a lower cost, you don't get the firmness or the guaranteed delivery there. So unit 2 in this conversion would take advantage, we see, mostly of that non-firm capacity that we would need. It is readily available a lot of the times during the year, but as Tom said, there are a couple of weeks out of the year, either extremely hot, extremely cold times, where that natural gas on a non-firm basis is not available. And those will be the times that we would switch over and use our stockpile of coal as that physical hedge to meet the power needs. Next slide, please. So question 3, given the reliance upon projected natural gas pricing has caused this utility significant duress in the past, what projections are currently relying on? What is the degree of certainty associated with those projections as the basis for the statement? Coal is currently running approximately 47% more expensive than gas, a situation which is not anticipated to reverse for the next few years. So what we typically use, we use a number of resources for our projections. I'm sorry you can't see this slide a little better. That graph has been reduced down some. But we use NYMEX, as Jamie mentioned before, as well as the Energy Authority and their research. And actually the graph that you see here on the screen actually comes from TEA, but it is actually sourced from NYMEX. And so when you look at this, I know it's busy, but when you look on the left side, those purple bars are actually where natural gas closed. Those different lines on the right side going out to the right, you'll see that they are projections at that time for different years. So you see the top line in red was the projection for gas in 2016. The one in yellow or orange below that was the one for 2017. And it goes down and further out. And it just shows you the change in the forecast that has come. The most recent forecast, the one that we're using, is actually in the blue on the lower side. And so you see that the commodity cost, which this is forecasting, the commodity cost stays below $3, is forecast to be below $3 out beyond or out through calendar year 2029. Now, this is the commodity cost that you see. So you do have to add some delivery charges on there. If you use an average of about 50 cents, even adding those on to the calendar year projection still keeps you below $3 out through calendar year 2029. So as the financials come in, the lower the natural gas price, obviously, the better return that you get for this project. Question 4, is $12.5 million the total cost estimate for this project, and how firm is that projection? We've actually worked with a number of vendors in reducing the uncertainty in the scope and have them cost the elements, and it's carrying a sufficient amount of contingency to cover those items that have been estimated but not firmly priced. So we have used outside firms to round up the scope, to put boundaries on the scope, and to give us what we feel are accurate cost estimates for the project. Next question, initial projections estimate that there are no adverse impacts on equipment performance or longevity. So the project would not reduce the projected longevity of the plant. Any thoughts on whether this investment would potentially lengthen the longevity of the plant? The studies that were done surrounding this project, they really focused on the boiler tube temperatures and primary superheat, which is basically the section that is closest to the fireball of the flame when you are combusting a fuel. And so it was taken into account the effects of those tube temperatures that burning natural gas would have. The study confirmed that the boiler is capable of operating within its current operating and design limits without any negative effects from burning natural gas. So is it possible that it could lengthen? Well, if you think about coal and the ash and the particles that are more abrasive, and you replace that with natural gas, as long as you can stay within that time period, it does effectively less damage over the course of time from that combustion product. Next question, please. Or next slide. So the next question, I'm sorry, previous. Number 6, will this conversion delay the retirement of Deerhaven 2 in any way? Will the $12.5 million expense require us to keep it in longer service to capitalize those costs? Will the conversion delay, or in any means or manner, the city's schedule of attaining 100% renewable by 2045? So as a result, GRU does not anticipate any changes to the retirement date of Deer Haven 2. This project does reduce the carbon footprint and reduces the cost within the current expected useful life of the unit. So no delays, no changes in the retirement date as a result. All of these savings will be realized within the useful life. Question number 7, are there any renewable fuels that could be burned in a dual fuel boiler? And yes, I'm specifically interested in biomass. If it's not practical, please explain why. So with this, what's happening is that we're currently reviewing the use of alternative fuels, or alternative renewable fuels in Deer Haven 2. And as we're exploring those and kind of vetting those, we'll be bringing that discussion forward as that additional information is available. We do not believe that this project in any way will hinder or impair the economics of any of those renewable fuels in the future. So it does leave that door open for that possibility as we vet those options. Question 8, can the solar PPA be increased to pick up some of the reduced capacity from retiring Deer Haven 2? I realize that Deer Haven 2 is a baseload generator and that the solar has limitations in providing baseload due to intermittency. How much battery storage could we purchase with 12.5 million? So the solar PPA is, as we've discussed before, is a supplement to traditional generation. Solar is very intermittent and is not considered a replacement for dispatchable generation. However, we did take a look at battery and the current cost that we know of, and the most recent cost estimates that we have. And for the discussion's sake, it costs about $2,000 per kW for a 4-hour battery. So that means that $12.5 million would buy about 6 megawatts of a 4-hour battery storage, or about 24 megawatt hours of storage. Okay. So for context, that's enough output to supply roughly 3% of our average load. That's about 200 megawatts for about 4 hours. So that $12 million in current technology and current costs would only buy you about 24 megawatt hours of storage, which again would meet 3% of our load for about 4 hours time. Next question. So in researching these questions, I've been reading the Gainesville, the GRU 2020 10-year site plan. I don't recall Ristow bringing this plan before the UAB for review and comment. If you have not, why not? This is sort of the document that seemed fundamentally the expression of board policy. I would appreciate the board to be briefed on this plan and how we can get more involved in the planning process. So a little bit about the 10-year site plan, which Jamie has the wonderful honor of being responsible to prepare every year. He can tell you how ecstatic he is by having to do that. Even though it says plan, it's really more of an annual report. Each electric utility in the state of Florida that has the capacity to produce more than 250 megawatts is required to submit one to the Public Service Commission. The primary focus here is really to review what each utility has as far as generation and transmission, how adequate it is, and essentially verify that it's able to meet its load reliably and serve its customers. So the 10-year site plan includes a summary of the utility's existing and planned generation and transmission resources. It also includes a history and a forecast of load for the customer segment, and also the utility as a whole. So an explanation of how these forecasts are developed, a history and a forecast of the fuel consumption, and also a history and forecast of energy production. So the purpose of the 10-year site plan is really to meet the PSC's annual regulatory requirement. It includes tentative data, but it is also non-binding. It is a non-binding action plan for any utility that produces that plan. It's just really to say, do you have the adequate equipment in place or plan to have the adequate equipment in place to meet your forecasted load? Next slide, please. So question 10, the plan is schedule 6.2, essentially shows a reduction in renewable energy fuel sources from 30.9% in 2019 to 17% in 2029. Almost all of this reduction is the use of biomass. Please explain this. The decline in renewables seems to directly conflict the city's goal to attain 100% renewable by 2045. What you see there in the 10-year site plan is really, again, not really a plan, but really a report. What's generated there by that energy forecast is done by GenTrader. GenTrader is a purely economic model, and so it selects the least cost generation options to meet the required need or the expected need within that plan. So in the model, if a fossil fuel generator is less expensive to dispatch than DHR, then that model is going to pick the least expensive option, and it's going to supply power from that first. So a little bit about that process. Historically, we've run Unit 2 as must run all year. Must run in an economic model means that if it is not an outage and it is available to run, then it must be running in the model. It must be supplying power. And that's year round. And DHR consequently was also modeled as a must run during the summer months, but purely economical during the rest of the year. We consider summer to be basically June through September. Well, we recently swapped that because we've had a change in the way that the units are dispatched. And so DHR now is effectively a must run unit year round, where Deerhaven 2 is now must run only during the summer and economically dispatched during that time period. So what that does is it effectively says that whenever the biomass unit is available, that it will run. However, once it is on, it will be dispatched economically. So it may not be loaded to the top. It will come in its dispatch order according to price. So it's important to make the distinction that GenTrader's output is only an estimate of the least cost generation. Okay, so due to reliability concerns, our actual dispatch may be different, and it may look different from GenTrader. So you do see a reduction from 30.9% to 17%. That is a purely economic model. And so with that model, you will see a change in how that runs. All right, next question, please. Number 11, the Schedule 6.2 also shows increased natural gas and coal use over the next 10 years. Again, this directly reflects, conflicts with the city's goal to attain 100% renewable by 2045. And essentially, that's a purely economic model, so it does take that to account in our GenTrader model. And the next question is the latter questions may be too much to discuss at this meeting. So if so, I would greatly appreciate a board discussion at a later date this year, or respectively request that we forward the matter to UAB Chair Wendell Porter for his consideration for a future board meeting. So obviously staff would not have a problem at all in bringing that informational meeting to you and an informational overview on the plan, what it is, why it exists, how it's put together, all the parts and pieces, and how it's made up, and of course the end user and who reads it. So if you would like more of that information, staff can definitely bring that to you. So the cost estimate of conversion, the Sierra Club Beyond Coal campaign, staff feels that the $12.5 million conversion cost is low. How did GRU arrive at this estimate, and how comprehensive is it? What are the potential additional costs or problems given that this conversion of an older plant? Well, first of all, this is specific to Deerhaven 2. We don't have any firsthand information of cost of conversion for any other units owned by any other utilities. So we have no reference of that. GRU's costs are unit specific and have been prepared by a third-party engineering firm that has some experience in doing this and this type of project implementation. So our cost estimate, again, is specific to Deerhaven 2, excluding cost of other units and other factors that may be there. Last question, number 13, the cost to the customer. In 2019, gas supplied about 45% of the power generation to GRU customers. 21% was from coal. Converting that 21% to gas will only affect the fuel adjustment portion of the GRU customer bill, not the flat rate customer charge or the energy use charges. In terms of dollars per month, how much will this save the typical GRU customer over the next 10 years? Would the $12.5 million be better spent on energy conservation measures for economically disadvantaged customers, or other pressing upgrades GRU has identified, such as AMI? So as we discussed in the financials of the project, it has a $50 million net present value, NPV, to customers, yielding downward rate pressure for all customers, and also lower emissions on top of that. So obviously decisions on rates are determined annually by the commission and where those go. But we do believe that this conversion not only has a great payback, but it also has excellent environmental attributes by significantly reducing emissions in current dollars. So I believe that is the last question, unless the board has any additional.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I appreciate the detailed answers. Answered quite a few of my own. And I will open the floor up for member questions, but I think I'll jump ahead of the line and take chair privilege if nobody minds. What's the size of the coal pile we have there currently as inventory?
Eric, I think you probably have a pretty good handle on that.
Yeah, we'll get an updated estimate tomorrow, but as of last Friday, it was about 230,000 tons.
Gotcha.
At full load, that's about 100 days. At current load, it's well over 3/4 of a year, 9 months.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. And then when you run it full bore on natural gas, what is the Unit 2's plant heat rate when you're doing it that way? I mean, running natural gas, does it have any effect on the plant heat rate? Running coal's what, about 10,500?
Actually, it depends on the load of the output, Wendell.
Yeah.
It can be as low as that. It can be as high as 13.5, I think, at the low end, where we're down around 50 megawatts. For this analysis and what we're being told by the vendors, we don't expect to see any significant change in the heat rate from the boiler. But you also have to consider there will be a lot of ancillary equipment that won't be running when we're on gas, such as the conveyor belts.
Yep.
And that emission control project on the back end. There's additional fans and things there. So shutting down those auxiliaries, I would expect to see a slight improvement over what it was on coal at a given load point, but that remains to be seen.
Right. Okay, well, that's excellent news on that. I appreciate that. Those were my main questions, other than a slight comment. I looked at the engineering side as well as I could, and the money side as well as I could from the data there. And I'd have to say, I think your economics are extremely conservative. I could see some reason to say that the savings might be a bit more than you stated. So I think your analysis is on the very conservative side.
I would agree with that, Wendell. And I think Jamie could confirm, when we did the analysis for the NPV, we looked at the gas savings based on the NYMEX. We also took into account potential savings on the O&M side. So we used approximately 50% of what we expect to save on the O&M side. So it should be actually a lot better. So we, as Mr. DeLeo would like to say, we would like to underpromise and overdeliver.
Yes, I understand that. I just wanted to get your reaction to that, my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and the other thing, if I could add, Wendell, is this is Ed.
Yeah.
When you start talking about savings to customers,
sorry, I know where you're going.
Yeah, it's very difficult with all the ancillary factors. There's other things can make it increase or decrease, and I think Eric said it in a way that it's up to the city commission. On the fuel side, it's not up to the city commission, but there are just so many factors that overall will affect it. And we're just trying to be judicious in what we say, but we know that it will have downward pressure.
Right.
So I just wanted to say that.
Lower rate pressure on the fuel adjustment side.
Well, and there'll also be some down rate pressure decrease as well, because the O&M decreases would fall on that side of the equation.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. That basically answered my questions. I just, main one was, how big is that pile of coal sitting out there? Thank you for that, Eric. And I'll open the floor up for other member questions. You got to unmute yourself, Barry. Go ahead, Barry.
Thank you. Well, first, on the last topic you were just talking, I guess I would say that you anticipate reduced fuel costs.
Yes.
Just avoid the whole issue of what it means.
Thank you, Barry.
For actual rates. But on going kind of where you were going, Wendell, with the NPV calculations, because they do seem low, based on a 40% IRR. What cap rate were you using? How many years? What annual savings were you using?
Jamie, why don't you handle that, since that was your spreadsheet analysis?
Sure. So, Mr. Jacobson, you are correct in that the IRR that we present there is low. If you do a straight IRR calculation, it comes out in the 40s, 40 percentile range instead of the 20s. But because we don't have any other projects that have 40% rates of return to reinvest those cash flows in, we use the modified internal rate of return, just assuming we'd take that money and pay down debt or do something that has a lower rate of return of 3%. So that brings the rate of return down to 20%. Our discount rate for the NPV calculations was 4%, and our cost of capital was 3.5%.
And how many years did you have for the NPV calculation, and what was your anticipated savings?
We began the savings in April of 2021, as soon as the unit's online, and then we ran the model through the end of December 2031, when the unit is scheduled to be retired. Of course, that's just based upon the unit was put into service in 1981. In 2031, it'll be 50 years old. So that number could go beyond. It's not set in stone, but that was the best information we have right now.
And what was the annual savings? Just average annual?
Well, it depends on fuel prices, but I can pull that up.
And if it's a problem, I don't want to go
no,
deeper than I already have in it.
A question too.
Hang tight a minute, Teresa. Barry's getting the last of his done first.
It's not the last, but
so, including the operational savings, we have anywhere in the range of 4 million, perhaps up to 10 million, perhaps 11 in some years, because we have such reduced scope of wear and tear. We're not taking care of a lot of the coal assets that just are so intensive.
Okay. And just I well, that was interesting.
Glad it wasn't just me.
All right.
I thought I was having a flashback for a second.
Yeah, I thought it was me.
On the NPV calculation, be interested to dig into this with you offline, because it really seems quite low what you come up with, and I think it should be just based on those numbers. But moving on, I am pleased to see the quick payback, because I do have concerns about investing more money into fossil fuel with the rapidly changing landscape. But with this kind of payback, that makes a lot of sense. I do have some heartburn over not using cradle to grave, just using, point source emission. Using that, you'd say, turn off the biomass plant. Look at all the CO2 it's putting out. And I understand why, from a utilities perspective, you look at things that way, but that's really personally not what I want to look at, as we're comparing CO2 impacts. From what I read, and there's a lot of different ideas on it, I consider coal and natural gas basically a wash in terms of climate change impact. So I think for a lot of, it bothers me every time we have these meetings to see the CO2 report, show all kinds of release from the biomass. So I think I would like to see in the future some kind of inclusion of that. But I do clearly recognize the other air quality benefits of natural gas, but that one's a little hard to take. Also, and these are a couple of thoughts for the future, the least cost generation approach that we're taking with the fuel choices does feel like there should be some kind of analysis in there to take into account CO2, to monetize CO2 in the calculation, to say, oh, it was a penny cheaper to burn coal or natural gas than to do biomass. You know, it doesn't seem like the approach that we want to be taking with GRU. So with that, honestly, in the balance of things, this seems like a pretty good project, which I'm a little surprised to be saying. You know, thank you for all the work you guys have done to get here. And with that, I will lower my hand.
Thank you, Member Jacobson. And I think Teresa Sperling-Wood had a question up next.
I do. I just have one question. I know right now natural gas is really, really low, but in 07 and 08, at the rates it was then, if we go back to those rates, what's the impact?
Well, obviously, if the price of gas goes above coal, we would either go back to coal, or depending on the direction from the City Commission, UAB, and the community, if they want the environmental benefits of producing less CO2, we would stay on gas and pay a premium for producing those megawatts with gas.
Yeah, I think the key there, Teresa, is that we're comparing coal to gas. You know, if coal went up to that level, there's, you know, with the way coal prices are going, and with us not having the sweetheart coal contract that we had before, we anticipate there being a delta between coal and natural gas. And remember, when you went back and looked at some of those original things with the biomass deal, that was for a very short time that the differential with natural gas went up like it did. So, you know, if it was a spike over a very short period of time. So that's why we're comfortable with that.
Yeah, but you know, the coal does serve as a physical hedge against the gas should it go crazy high for some reason.
Yes.
So we would never be any worse off than we are right now today, burning the coal. And again, it would be a question of whether we're going to continue with economic dispatch or whether you go with environmental dispatch followed by economic dispatch. Reliability trumps all, but that would be the preference.
Okay, well, I know that it spiked very, very high and we're at an all-time low. So is there any analysis if it gets somewhere in between? Because if they stop the fracking and all those things, won't it naturally go up?
One would expect that. I mean, all the indications we have right now is they expect it to remain quite low for the next decade. I don't expect it to stay as low as it is right now, but it should stay, as Eric was talking about earlier, something below $3 delivered probably for the next decade.
Yeah, the indications just aren't there, particularly with the supply. And even if you were to stop fracking, that's not going to happen over the next couple of years. I mean,
Okay.
we're talking about a $12 million investment banked on the fact that we have a differential between gas and coal, whereas in the past we made a $2 billion investment on the fact that, you know, fracking wouldn't continue, there'd be carbon credits, there'd be all these other things. Mm-hmm. The magnitude of the difference of what we're talking about here is infinitesimal compared to the decisions made in the past.
Okay, thank you.
I would have to add in that it would be my bet that technology will make the whole point moot, that the price of natural gas will never go back up again in a real sense. You might have a localized problem in a winter, but we'll start pulling off natural gas. And we've already seen that in some utilities in the country before we run out of it. So the price will never go back up appreciably. You might have a spike in winter, but I don't see it. That's my own personal opinion, of course. Any other questions from members about this, or do I entertain a motion here?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Wes has got one, and then Member Fletcher's got one.
Most of my questions were already answered. I'll defer to Fletcher first if he wants to ask one.
All right, Fletcher, you're still muted, so unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I've got 2 quickies to start with and then a longie. For the quickie, I just want to say I'd like to have Robin send us the presentation. Some of those numbers went a little fast for me, and I'd like to be able to commit those to memory. Second of all, the point was made that at some times of the year, natural gas isn't necessarily completely available. Can you just give me some anecdotes or some experience of like how long these difficulties arise, or how frequently, or how big they are, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm going to take a piece of that, and I'm going to turn it over to Eric to finish it off. But typically, there's always gas available. It's a question of the price, because you can always, through the force of financially, entice somebody else to have them give you your gas through basically paying a high price. But there are probably times it just gets so crazy high that for all intents and purposes, it's not available. There has been, since my tenure here in 5 years, there was at least one occasion where for a period of 2 or 3 days, we had very, very little gas available to GRU, and that was because of pipeline maintenance that was ongoing from Florida Gas. So the longest I've seen it has been 3 days. And Eric, you've been here much longer than I have and have much more experience with this. What would you like to add to that?
Sure, I think that's a very good question, and even amongst ourselves, we tried to frame in what's reasonable, and so in any given year, you will have times that happens. The most recent one, and I think we may be talking about the same thing, Tom, was I think the summer or the winter of 19, I believe January of 19,
Yes.
where you had an extremely cold stretch that lasted 3 or 4 days. And just for reference, the state of Florida is between 75 to 80% of the power production is done by natural gas. And so when you have that firm fixed capacity, everybody is using all of their capacity. You also have to realize that for GRU, on cold days, our capacity is mostly used up by our LDC. So our residential customers, our commercial customers that use natural gas, they get first choice or first use of that gas, which in that case in January of 19 left very little for power production use of natural gas. We actually shut down the Kelly plant because we didn't have enough capacity. We generated all of our power production on alternative fuels per se. Coal, biomass, and diesel during that time period, or even bunker C, our number 6 oil.
Right.
So there are times throughout the year that it does happen. It does happen occasionally during the summer on extremely hot days because most of the state is using natural gas to produce power. Very hot days, very long stretches of hot days, you will see capacity dwindle down to very little except what you've already allotted for. So there are times during the year, and it's pretty repetitive. Some years are worse than others, but you typically see it very cold days, very warm days, and maybe a few in between.
Okay, thanks. Well, now for my longie then. Okay. Several of the questions dealt with the 10-year site plan. I too have very carefully gone through that and read it in comparison with the 10-year site plans of other utilities. And I understand the modeling and how it is set, but I want to say that I'm kind of disappointed. I think that the GRU needs a Rock of Gibraltar. GRU needs a guiding star, a Polaris, to guide against for 2045, and I haven't seen that. And I'm wondering if the UAB could encourage staff to prepare an overall plan for achieving the 2045 objective that we all talk about. Right now, it all is kind of mysterious. It's all in the sweet by and by up in the sky somewhere, and we don't have anything definitive, no Rock of Gibraltar to navigate against. And I think we definitely need something more concrete to guide these kinds of discussions that will continue over and over and over again for years. We need something to use as a yardstick there.
Member Fletcher, with all due respect, When you can tell me the reliability, the affordability, the availability of battery power, we can do that. Until then, that's why it's not the Rock of Gibraltar. We don't have anything to do. We can sit there and say, we wish batteries would do X, Y, Z. We think they can be affordable. We think we can cover it this way and make that something. I mean, that's part of what we've done in the IRP, Integrated Resource Plan. But to put that in a 10-year site plan, quite frankly, wouldn't be prudent. My perspective.
General Manager, can I add something?
Sure.
Our chair, board members, Dino DeLeo, Energy Supply Officer. Just take a little bit of context to that. We do have an integrated resource plan that we have shared with the Utility Advisory Board that is 100% renewable in 2045. And we have that IRP, and it's got about a $2 billion cost associated with it, with the current technology. So that's what the general manager is referencing. We're moving towards renewable. The solar is the very first step. But we have an IRP. We just can't afford that IRP. Our customers could not afford that IRP. So we're counting on technology shifts in battery and in solar, which is inverters, to get us in, as we move towards the 2030 area, what else we can add and modify that IRP. That integrated resource plan has been modified 7 times in the last 4 years, and we continue to update that as technology changes. But we do have a plan, and it has been presented to the Utility Advisory Board previously. Thank you.
And I would have to add my own 2 cents worth in on that, is along with the IRP, which we don't want to get into tonight, and some of those issues, but the whole issue of AMI, the solar project that you've got ongoing, these are all the first steps and the ongoing steps that we need to implement this plan that will be finished by 2045, if not sooner. So I think we do kind of have a plan. That it's not written in stone is exactly points to what Ed was talking about. Some of these things are not fully baked yet, but I'm totally confident they will be, and totally confident that we will move in that direction with all due haste. But to be able to put a stake in the ground right now and say, this is where we're going to be right now. Even I, who want to push a little faster than most, if not, except Wes, sorry, I still can't go there. So again, I think Ed's answer was to the point on that.
Well, Chairman Porter, you got to give us our due, though. I mean, we're at 32% last year. When we get the solar in there, we'll be at 35, 36%. We are just light years ahead of most folks in the industry.
Oh, absolutely. No problem with that at all, Tom. I agree entirely and understand entirely. So we're arms and legs ahead of most utilities. You got to look you usually go out to Hawaii or other complete nations before you get to people more integrated than we are.
Yeah, and assuming, we go forward with this gasification, if you look at where this utility was with its carbon footprint back in 06, where you're putting out close to 2 million tons a year, to after this will probably be down in the 700,000 range. It's remarkable.
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Was that Wes? Yeah, go ahead, member.
That is Wes.
Yeah.
Thank you. To Fletcher's point, we do have a policy plan. It's been under review for quite some time now, and I would love to see that come back to the board. I realize with coronavirus, we've had some delays, but that's the sort of thing I would like to see, that policy plan be the pole star, the North Star. I raised the questions about the 10-year site plan because that is what the public sees now. That's what they see as GRU's policy. And that is not something that we want to have out there as our policy when we see renewables going from 32 down to 17. I realize, and Ed's response, and I appreciate staff's response, that it's just a regulatory requirement, but it is more than that. It's a public document. I really do appreciate staff taking the time to answer all those questions. I would like a future meeting on the 10-year plan. As Fletcher has brought it up, I think it's something we could kind of discuss more, and I understand Gen Trader is generating the decisions in the plan, but I'd like to see board policy dictating the plan rather than a computer model, and getting us out there and getting ahead of it.
Second the motion.
Yeah, there we go. Unless there's other board comments, I'm going to make a motion, but it's a two-part motion because I'm going to add on my own to staff's recommendation.
This is Jason. I actually did have a comment and a question.
Okay, I'll wait on that then.
Okay. Chair, is that acceptable?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Go ahead, Member Foltz.
Okay. So just a quick comment and a question. The comment first, I just wanted to second Member Jacobson's comments about natural gas. I completely agree with that. And I actually find the language that GR uses in communicating with the public about natural gas to be highly problematic. It's something that I would like to see us address in a future meeting. I know we can't get into that territory tonight, but I definitely think it's something that we should talk about in the future. So that's my comment. And then my question is just a question of process. So we were told that this project has been approximately 18 months in development. And since I'm, brand new to the UAB, I wanted to ask if this project has been discussed by the UAB previous to tonight.
Member Foltz, not discussed formally, but General Manager Bolarski has said that it was coming several times before, probably as much as 6 to 8 months ago.
So just from my perspective, as a matter of process, if there's a project that's 18 months in development, I would certainly, as a member of the UAB, like to have these kinds of discussions a bit further out. This feels a little bit 11th hour and kind of rubber stamp to me. And especially given that some of the more detailed questions that folks had to ask tonight couldn't necessarily be answered, it would be nice if we had a little more lead time to be able to ask those sort of questions and get more comprehensive responses in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to indicate that actually this first came up in last year's budget discussions with the UAB, and when we were talking about some of the capital expenditures for the coming years, and we also talked about the possibility of reducing emissions, and we talked about that hard or the most viable option for that was the gasification of the DH2 facility. And we talked about halving those emissions. And I think the numbers we used at that time were somewhere between $15 and $20 million of cost. And so we thought that had a very good return. So the framework by which we're talking about tonight was talked about in several meetings during the budget, and then in discussions, and actually during some of the policy work that Wes, Member Wheeler was talking about. So this hasn't been sprung, and it's something that we're bringing back with, using our engineering consultants, having it vetted, and performing our due diligence, bringing things back to you that may be half-baked, which some people have called me from time to time, may not be the appropriate way to do things, because quite frankly, we may have 10 or 12 different projects that are kind of in the works looking at them. And we need to kind of reach a certain hurdle before we can bring them back, or we'd be having meetings twice a week, every month, for some of these things. So while I appreciate it is a lot to grasp, there's no doubt about it. And look, this becomes part of the budget discussions as well. So I just wanted it on the record that's what we've done. Excuse me.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I?
Yes.
I'm going to make a motion and to explain. Some folks have said the gas is the bridge to the future. It's a bridge fuel. And I like the short-term benefits of this project. And I just want to make sure that we have a bridge and not a cul-de-sac.
Cul-de-sac? Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I want to make sure that we just don't put all our eggs in one basket and say, oh, gas is so wonderful, that this is our future. So I'm going to make a two-part motion. And the first is to authorize the general manager or his designee to execute agreements as required to complete the project in accordance with GRU procurement policies and procedures, subject to approval by the city attorney as to form and legality. That is staff's recommendation. And here's the second part. As part of that authorization, direct staff to prepare and present a DH2 transition or decommissioning plan by 2032. So that would mean a plan to tell us how they plan to replace DH2 with renewable energy resources, and not so that this project not become an extension of DH2 into the indefinite future. Thank you.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second? Everybody's muted if somebody's trying to second.
This is second.
This is Carla.
Okay, Carla, and I think we got a second by Jason. Was that you, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, there's a second with Jason. Member Miles?
Oh, I was just giving a second. That's all.
Oh, okay. All right. And Teresa, I think your mic is on. There's some buzz talk in the background.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, General Manager.
Yeah, a decommissioning plan, and maybe this goes to Member Wheeler. You want a decommissioning plan prior to this being executed and built?
No,
modified?
no. If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
What I would like is, as part of the authorization, I don't want to stop this project from going forward, but I would like staff to follow up with, let's say within the next year, a plan so that we don't find ourselves, I want to have a roadmap out of here. I like the fact that we have these immediate short-term benefits, but I don't want to lose focus on the fact that we want to decommission or transition Deer Haven 2 by 2032. I don't want this short-term benefit to end up being a long-term commitment to burning gas at Deer Haven 2. So I don't need the plan before you get started on this, but I do want it soon so that we know that we're not going to rest on our laurels.
And I appreciate that. I do. But one thing associated with that, developing decommissioning plans for generating assets is not a small thing. And once you do it, you recognize it on your financial statements, and that becomes a larger ordeal than you may think. And that becomes basically, how would you word it? It has some financial ramifications to it. So I'd like to be able to talk to my CFO in that regard, to development of those retirement plans for that asset.
Could we just say the retirement plans instead of using the formal legal definition of decommissioning? I mean, it's going to be a 50-year-old plant anyway. So
right.
Again, it's on its last legs, regardless of how we wordsmith it here.
That I don't really care if the general manager wants a retirement plan rather than decommission. I just want to have us on the record with a written plan that we're going to be getting out of this burning fossil fuel at DH2 by 2032.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other further comments before we put this to the floor and ask for citizen comment? Member Crow?
A couple of hands there.
Is there somebody speaking? Okay, do I have the floor here?
Yeah.
I just want to speak to what Wes said. I understand the issues that Ed raised and the question of, the wordsmithing, but as I see what he was saying with that second part, he was trying to talk about the general context in which this project is set, will be set, and will be ended. And that's what I was speaking to in terms of a Polaris, a rocket Gibraltar. And I see that as critical to decision making in a broader 360-degree context.
All right. And then I think we had staff in there was trying to make a comment. Did I talk over top of you, Robin?
Oh, no, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure you saw that you have several hands. So.
No, I didn't. I've got my, I got hands all over the place.
Some of the old, you have Member Fultz, Member Jacobson, and Member Sperlingwood.
Okay. Who's next on this? I think Teresa was trying to speak earlier and I talked over top of her. Member Sperlingwood, did you have a comment? You're still on mute. Okay.
Well, hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
I was driving and stopped driving and carried groceries in and it went unmute and I dropped a whole bottle of stuff all over the kitchen. So if you guys heard anything crazy, that's what happened.
Oh, no, you're safe.
Okay, good. Thanks. Sorry.
All right. Okay, member, let's see. Barry, did we have a question back to you?
Thank you. Just, I appreciate, Wes, what you're saying about Deerhaven 2 and the overall goals and where we're trying to head to. But I guess my question was for Ed, whether wordsmithing would address your concerns of what gets triggered if we're investigating kind of the life cycle of Deerhaven rather than using the word decommission.
Yeah, I think we can come up with something that doesn't spur a full retirement analysis with a net present value calculation of what liability we put on our balance sheet at this particular time, and have to develop a sinking fund for that. Although, quite frankly, if that's what you all are thinking, you can't just retire an asset without the financial support to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And there are financial consequences to this, so that might not be a bad idea. And after thinking about it a little bit, as everyone's kind of went around the horn, because there will be substantial cost to you don't decommission a plant and let it sit there like a monument to a foregone era. You have to return it to a certain condition and remove all the steel and the refractory and things like that, and probably continue to do groundwater monitoring and those types of things associated with the work that's been done there over the years. So it's not a small feat associated with that.
Well, I think it's an important discussion to have, but it should be a part of a bigger discussion, not to pick a plant one at a time. Now, I did appreciate the question from Wes, because I could see another gray hair come into your beard as the question was being asked. So for my amusement, I appreciate it.
Well, it's funny. Now that Wes has grown all his hair out, he has more gray hair than I do. So he's much more of a warrior than I am, apparently.
And I'm not going to mock anyone's hair growth, trust me.
That I am.
All right. Let's see. And Member Crow, did you have another question? Okay, he's good. And how about you, Member Fultz?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, that's good. Are you still on? Yeah, there you go. I clicked something, lost everybody. Anyway, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. We've had our discussion and need to open up the floor for citizen comment before we vote.
Yes, sir. I believe we have just one speaker, Mr. Nathan Scott, and he should be on the line. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Yes, good evening, Nathan Scott. The presentation being presented by GRU is not the presentation in the agenda item backup. This appears to be a violation of the Commission's adopted rules of procedure for virtual meetings. Ed, please provide me with a copy of the GRU presentation that's being presented. With respect to the motion, I do have the following concerns. Has this gasification conversion been performed on any other coal-fired generating unit similar to DH2? If so, where, at what cost, and with what results? Secondly, what vendor is doing the engineering work on dual fuel conversion? Will this work be performed under an EPC contract? Is GRU doing the engineering and construction? Again, we know what happened with CR3. What warranty and performance guarantees are being accomplished? What is the probability of damage to the unit? Hopefully low, but we need to know this before we jump in head first. I know for the record, GRU ratepayers are still paying off the debt from the DH2 emissions upgrade. I'd like to get an answer as to the DH2 heat rate with 100% with natural gas at 100% load. That was kind of skipped over, I thought. The assertion that natural gas prices never go back up significantly, that's a very speculative and unfounded assumption. I don't know who made that. Also heard a statement that Kelly didn't have sufficient firm capacity to run in a gas-constrained environment. Did GRU favor the LDC over GRU electric customers who paid for the firm capacity? And in closing, I hope I get answers to the questions I just asked, but generally support what GRU is seeking to accomplish, noting that GRU admitted that GRU would not have the firm gas supply, which would change the project economics otherwise. But again, I think it's very important to understand, and I think this presentation has a little bit more detail than was posted in the agenda backup. I think it's disappointing that that wasn't available prior to the meeting, but I look forward to reviewing that if I can get a copy of it, which I can't. I can't see what you guys are doing because the video is not working. But again, I think it's important to understand whether this gasification conversion has been performed on any other coal-fired generating units similar to DH2, and if so, where, at what cost, and what results. Also, looking at the warranty and performance guarantees and looking at who's doing the work in case something catastrophic happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair, that's the only member of the public that was signed up to speak.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, we've had quite a discussion on this, and we've had a motion and a second. I think all things considered equal, it's time for a vote, and I'd like our utility liaison, Robin Baxley, to call out a roll call on that.
A member Porter.
I vote for it. Aye.
Member Wheeler.
Aye.
Member Jacobson.
Aye.
Member Miles.
Aye.
Member Crow.
Aye.
And Member Folks.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously with Member Rockwell absent.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Robin, you were able to get all the motion language down?
I did.
Okay,
Part
thank you.
one was to approve the staff recommendation or recommend the staff recommendation. And then part two was to direct staff to prepare and present a decommissioning plan for DH2 by 2032.
Yes, and I was willing to accept Ed's substitution and use the word retirement if he prefers to have that.
Okay, I will make a note of that.
All right. And seeing as how we're still operating under special rules for meetings, there's no sign off or anything else unless our liaison has any news about our next meeting.
Your next meeting will be on July 9th. We will continue the budget presentation that we removed tonight. We are continuing that to the July 9th meeting. It is my understanding, I think I mentioned this at the start of the meeting, the commission is working toward having all the boards go back to in-person meetings. I still have to get some additional information on that. We'll have to figure out if we are going to do that, how are we going to do it? So I will keep in touch with you all on that. But otherwise, I don't have anything else for you tonight.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank everybody, and especially thanks staff for their work on this presentation. And I think, Robin, since you're controlling the meeting, you can hit the button.
I do have one more.
Okay, hold on. Go ahead, Wes.
member comment. I would like, we had several comments about the 10-year site plan. I'd like staff to come back later in the year after budget discussions and give us a 10-year site plan presentation, please. I'd also like at some point, I know we're busy with budget coming up, at some point, please give us a status on what's going on with the policy plan. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Got that,
Thank you.
Robin? You got that, Robin?
Yes, got all of that. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.